Hey guys, Edward's Branchline Productions, on behalf of Edward's Markman Who Branchline, we're going to be talking about The Adventure Begins, the first 70th anniversary special Thomas and Friends film. Now, this movie exceeded my expectations. Upon watching it, I thought, it's just going to be another one of those generic specials, but this was actually a really good special to just watch. I watched it a couple of times over, and yeah, it recreated the first few books of the Railway series for once. We got introduced to what Thomas and James would have looked like if they were back in series 1, and Thomas's introduction was great. Gordon's famous line, the shame of it," is one of my favorites. The whole story of The Adventure Begins is really good, and near the ending, I won't give the movie too much away if any of you haven't seen it, but I think there's going to be a second movie, like a sequel to The Adventure Begins. So overall, I really like this one.
Hi guys, Extreme Trains / Trains Extreme here, and I have to agree with everything that's already been said. I also was really pleasantly surprised with this special and thought on net it was a pretty darn good job.
What was good about this? What isn't good about this? This movie is one of my top favorite Thomas and Friends movies I think we reviewed. There's a lot of new series mixed with classic series. I think there's more classic series than new series in this. However, I can't think of words to describe how I like this movie. I think Trains Extreme would agree with me on this. My favorite scene is definitely James's crash scene. We actually see it happen, and Tom is going to save him instead of just sitting in a yard, just shunting. And Tom is going to get the breakdown crane at Knapford, not Tidmouth, is really good, and he actually did a selfless thing and rescued James from a horrible accident, which earned him his branch line, which earned James a new coat of paint, and I think that's what should have been added to the story way back when it was the model series. What else? Overall, that was my most favorite and cherished moments of the movie.
I have to say, I would definitely agree the crash was really exciting, but for me, I think what really got to me was the reuse of the old music in a new way with kind of different remixes. I think it was that older style of storytelling that was quite simple and clear, and just the way they faithfully recreated those kind of shots and situations. To me, this felt very much like a remake, and I think that was the intent of this special, but it just felt like a really well done modernization of that original book stories and also of the episodes at the beginning of season 1. So for me, I think that's what I like the most about it, is that they didn't deviate too much from the source material, and where they did it really well. For example, with the music, for example, with giving Thomas a new paint scheme, even if it wasn't super correct or whatever, I think that was really effective in conveying those ideas that the original books were trying to do.
A couple of things did really bother me about The Adventure Begins. His introduction was really awkward when he just pulled up in front of Gordon just awkwardly, just out of the blue. I didn't really like it that much, and I really would have liked it if he just came in normally, like a tank, like just a normal engine. And Thomas's introduction, although it was nice, his livery was really inaccurate. He should have been a London Brighton South Coast Railway umber brown color instead of this really weird green color. And Henry should have been in his old shape instead of his new one. What else? Tidmouth Sheds itself should have been 6 roads and not 7. But these are just minor nitpicks that I have about it. But overall, it doesn't really detract. It doesn't really steer away how great The Adventure Begins was. Yeah, that's pretty much it. What Trains Extreme? Any final thoughts?
Look, in terms of stuff I didn't like, there wasn't a whole lot that I found particularly problematic. I think maybe the only thing that I found a little bit frustrating is that the way they introduced Jerome and Jeremy, the breakdown crane, and then equally Glenn, the coffee pot, was just kind of awkward. Like, it felt very much to me like those characters were made purely to make merchandise, except then they didn't even make any merchandise out of the breakdown crane. So what was the point of making them characters in the movie if they weren't even going to make merchandise from them? I mean, I know at least Glenn got a Trackmaster engine, but I also felt that was incredibly underused, although I think he's coming back in season 20, which will be nice. So that to me just seemed kind of awkward because it didn't make a lot of sense. Another thing would just be that this is confusing in the Thomas and Friends world only because it kind of retcons season 1 or parts of season 1 out of the continuity of the series. Now, Thomas and Friends continuity is like a bit of a mess because no one really knows even if the Magic Railroad is part of it now. I mean, personally, I don't see why it's not, but whatever. So I think this, even though I really like the fact it's a remake, it doesn't quite ever say that it's a remake. You just kind of assume that it is. So it means some of those plot elements from the very first season are now actually replaced. So I think that'll depend on whether the series goes on, and then hopefully if they make more, remake kind of movies and specials, that will make it really clear if they're actually rebooting the beginning of the franchise, or if they're just reimagining these old stories in a modern CGI context. The last thing I would say is I think a lot of the foreshadowing in the story was really obvious. Like, it was so obvious about James's brakes, and I think that kind of took away from the surprise, because, I mean, yeah, it became so obvious that you knew what was gonna happen even without reading the books or having seen the other episodes, and that probably spoiled the fun a little bit. But apart from that, nothing big in any capacity.
My final thoughts on The Adventure Begins are, it's a must-see. If you're a Thomas fan but have not seen what its potential could be, or could have been back when it was Sharon Miller writing this, it's a must-see. Just go watch it. You won't regret a second of watching it. My rating would be a 9.5 out of 10. It's a highly anticipated Thomas special. It's everyone's favorite. If you haven't seen it and you're a Thomas fan and you're a fan of the classic series and you like a mix of nostalgia, go watch this one. It's a really good representation of what it should have been back in 1990 whatever. Since now, it's a really, really cherished movie, and I think everyone should go see it.
My final thoughts on this are pretty clear. It is definitely up there with my favourite Thomas and Friends episodes, specials, whatever. I think this is excellent, both for new fans and for old fans, and I'm really, really excited with the idea that they might be making more. Even if they don't, I think this was a really, really nice way to celebrate 7 years of Thomas and Friends in a way which appeals to those people who have been around for a very long time, as opposed to Legend of the Lost Treasure, which was just kind of, another episode or series special for the year, as has been standard for the last, quite a few years now. So I think it was really exciting that Hit and Andrew Brenner and all the guys at Mattel got together and decided to make this special, and I'm really, really happy that they've done that, and I just hope now that as we're seeing in the series more continuity and more connectedness occurring between episodes, I really hope they can start to draw on that a little bit more, as they've done in that special, and really create some special stuff into the future where we are getting away from the serialized story of the week and more into the fact that these characters do change, they do grow, they do evolve. And that's something which I think is really, really excellent to bring back to the Thomas and Friends franchise. But apart from that, that's all from me. Thanks for listening. This is Extreme Trains. Of course, don't forget to check out the other reviews that we've got up here on this channel and our individual channels. But, as always, thanks for listening. That's all we got time for. This is Edward's Month on Who Branchline.